When you see B2B payments, crypto cards, and P2P payments are flat. My take is that that's because that's the crypto native way of sending stablecoins. MasterCard and Visa are neck to neck in co-branded crypto cards programs. This is an indication that it's a really close competition. Rain rises 250 million Series C to scale stablecoin powered payment infrastructure to global enterprises. Really exciting to see this combination of the Artemis report, Rain. I'm just happy for the industry that this is one of the most exciting companies. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera. I'm really happy to be recording with my great friend Kush, founder of Odyssea Labs. I'm Av, co-founder and CEO of Bando. Kush, how's everything, man? I think that this might be one of our first episodes where you and I record together this year. Frontera is already 1 year old. I think that last year was
1 year
amazing.
old.
Yeah, can you believe?
Oh, that's crazy. Wow.
We went from maybe 200 people in the newsletter to we're around of 2,700, and I think that of those 2,700, they are around of 90% like high signal people.
Nice.
So I don't know, like 15x growth this year. We're also aiming for that type of growth. And how's everything, man? You're back in Latin America, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I spent the holidays, a month in Europe, a very cold, gray, rainy month. So just happy to be back in very warm climates, or warmer climates at least. So yeah, man,
Yeah,
how about you? How are you doing?
me too. I spent almost 4 weeks in Europe. It was cold. The images of Russia are fucking crazy. People like blizzards the size of buildings. I was in Madrid. That is basically the nicest place in Europe to be during winter. But also really happy to come back, to be locked in at home, absolutely working all day on making Bando grow. And man, I want to start telling you a story of what I did this weekend. This weekend I went to Bogota, Colombia, because our friends of Mis Propias Finanzas invited me to basically do a present a panel and a chat conference about crypto in their conference called Monicon. And I want to talk about this because I think that there are a lot of things that we need to learn as a crypto industry of this type of events. So Monicon was a really retail money festival. They had 2 stages, 4 auditoriums, like 10 classrooms, and 6,000 people were there in the event. Basically, it was packed, and these people paid $100 to be in that event. There was no free food, there was no free coffee, there was basically no free water, and everybody was super happy. Everybody was taking notes, learning a lot. There was the author of the Bitcoin standard in one of the main conferences. And one of the things that I think it's super interesting is that this community, Mis Propias Finanzas, were able to bring together BlackRock, retail, crypto companies like Meru and Wenia, and people were really happy around it. So this was a great experience, and I want to talk. I want to talk about it in Frontera because you and I have been talking off the record about jadedness on crypto conferences, where you go and it's all about the vibes. And I don't wanna be harsh, but maybe some of these big companies send a team, and the team is like, yeah, let's go party, let's do business development, let's get some nice meals. And I don't know what's your take, but from the last crypto conferences, I've had a lot of fun, but I'm not sure that I've had a lot of impact for my business. And when you see that a lot of founders don't go to those conferences, it makes me wonder if we're having the right approach. What do you think? And also, if you have any questions about Monica, I'm happy to share.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll start off with kind of wider reflection, and then we can double click on MoneyCon, because I actually think it's a really interesting case study to, I think, what people are generally looking for. I think on the wider reflection of the ROI of conferences as a whole, I think that, that Naval Ravikant just had a big video that went quite viral where he basically said, like, you're wasting your damn time going to all these conferences. He was like, including this one that you're currently at. And his thesis is just build amazing things and you'll naturally attract amazing people, right? And I think that, frankly, that has been my experience. I think last year I was probably in a new city once a week, which got incredibly tiring. Whereas this year, my plan is to, in fact, maybe only go to about 4 cities in total, right? So I'm really just not intending on going to any conferences. There are a couple of exceptions that I've maybe been invited to speak at, or I know that there's going to be exactly the kind of profile that I'm looking for. Maybe it's a completely like brand new network, but continuing to kind of engage in this very circular network, I think, is never really helpful. I think you end up exhausted afterwards. And again, I think especially if you take your whole team, like DevConnect, right? We took the whole team there, and things just kind of come to a halt, right? And so I think, and frankly, it's like been really reflecting on this like 1% better every day, because I think that compounding effect is incredibly important, right? And so I think it's like you actually take off, if you take an entire week off, right, you'll end up taking over, I'd say 8-9% off that compounding, and actually that's incredibly detrimental, right? So that's my wider take. I'm curious if you have any reactions, and I'd love to double click on mis finanzas personales.
Yeah. I completely agree. And also, dude, it's crazy that you say that you're only gonna go to 4 cities, right? I mean, there's a lot of people in the world that do not travel, and we're so used to like high drive, high travel, just working on an airplane. And one of the things that I wanna double down is that I think that the original scene for crypto conferences has been making everything free for everyone. So people are really, I don't know, spoiled to get amazing things for free. And I think that that's also a waste of money and time. In Mis Propias Finanzas event in MoneyCon, people paid for everything, and you looked at them and they were happy because they were getting a lot of value. So my mental model to conferences is, what value are you obtaining? If everything's free, basically you're obtaining free stuff, not necessarily business stuff or nice things or like good business opportunities, but just a good steak in Argentina or nice merch. And this is kind of harsh, but I remember in November I was walking with this person that it's in an important company, and that person told me, "Are you going to what's the name of the one that it's in Cannes, the conference that it's
ECC.
in Cannes? Are you going to ECC?" And I told him, "No, dude, I'm not traveling to Europe to go to Cannes." And he told me, and I asked, "You?" "Well, I just want to go to Cannes." So for me as a founder, that is like, dude, so hard because you're not
Yeah.
gonna generate any value for your company. You just want to hang in Cannes.
I think, the reality is, like, I think Abu and I are focused on, I think we have very little interest in keeping crypto as an insular technology. I think like we are both ideologically like really aligned with crypto's like thesis and values, and think that, this is why we do this podcast. That's why you do Espacio Crypto. That's why you're doing work with Bando, because you think that like this technology is so important and should be propagated far and wide. And the thing is, if you end up going to these incredibly insular, to put it nicely, crypto conferences, you don't really get outside of that. But there are people for whom maybe, let's say like if you work at Lido, for example, right? And Lido's target audience and customer base is going to be at ECC, right? Because they're targeting incredibly crypto native folks. And so therefore it does make sense for you to be there. But I think for people who perhaps want to take this thing to the real world, then it doesn't necessarily make all that much sense. Like I think it's so much more. You probably onboarded way many more people at going to Mis Propias Finanzas conference
Dude,
than going to like East Denver, right?
dude, incredible. I mean, actually, it was really surprising because I went to Mis Propias Finanzas event, and when they told me 2 stages where they could fit 1,000 people, 4 auditoriums where they can fit 500 people, 10 classrooms where they can fit 100 to 200 people, I said, this is never gonna work. this is obviously gonna fail. There are gonna be a bunch of conferences that are gonna be empty. And it was the other way around. People were sitting down outside of the conferences in the floor waiting for it to start. And then I said, okay, I see that there's traction. But nobody knows me in Colombia, I thought. And it was packed. It was so packed, my conference, that some people couldn't get into the classroom. And we're doing it again virtually because some people got mad that couldn't see it. So I said, like, what the hell are we doing wrong in ETHCC or in ETH Mexico or in any ETH X? I always say that saying, I don't know, ETH Bolivia is for external people as stupid or as equal as hearing like Cardano Tepoztlan. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything.
What was the subject of your talk?
The like crypto fundamentals. It
Okay.
was a lot about personal finance. So I talked about crypto as an asset class and how to include it in a portfolio. What do you think it was my non-financial advice?
I think we've also been having a lot of off-camera conversations, right? And it was probably just like buy Bitcoin. Maybe that's probably like 85% of your allocation, and 15% on like random things like maybe Hype or Solana or Ethereum, right? Like, was that generally the sizing?
I said three portfolios. The first one, only Bitcoin. And do not buy anything else until you are at least a little knowledgeable on it. And then basically a majority of Bitcoin and two other for people that want more risk. And just to finish this thing on conferences, I wanna this week's Frontera that you should read it, go and read it in our Beehive, in our newsletter. During the last 12 months, the best two conferences I've been at were Bitso Stablecoin Conference and Mis Propias Finanzas. Both absolutely focused on some target audience. Bitso Stablecoin Conference, B2B, Mis Propias Finanzas, retail. So I think that the crypto industry needs to benchmark these two conferences to see what happened. If you ask anyone that went to Bitso Stablecoin Conference, they'll say it was a super high value event. So it's a great thing to benchmark. And any final thoughts on this type of events, or should we move to stablecoin cards?
I think we got a lot to cover, so let's move it along.
Cool, perfect. So Artemis published this really, I don't know, really amazing report. Hats off to Artemis. They're doing, I think, that some of the best research in the industry. For me, I think that Artemis is my go-to data source for stablecoins. Like Frontera is the go-to data source for frontier markets, Latin America, Asia, Southeast Asia, and other markets. I think that Artemis is that thing for stablecoins today. So they published a report on stablecoin backed cards, and I have a couple of key messages that I wanna bring. So the first one is that CAGR, so compounded annual growth rate, is 106% for stablecoin backed cards. When you see B2B payments, crypto cards, and P2P payments, basically P2P payments are flat. They're in a plateau. P2P payments in stablecoins, and my take is that that's because that's the crypto native way of sending stablecoins. That's not the fintech way, or that's not the use case for B2B. It's just when basically I send you a P2P stablecoin transfer. And that's because, hey, dude, you paid this cafe in Denver, here are 15 USDC. And because we are both crypto natives, and I think that we are plateaued as how many more crypto natives we can get, because this industry has been around for 16 years. Whoever was interested in the last 16 years on this thing, it's in the industry today. So the two segments that are growing aggressively are basically stablecoin cards and B2B payments. And I absolutely love this chart. So you see how P2P is basically plateauing, and cards is growing really, really aggressively, as well as B2B payments. So I think that my read is that B2B payments are really the next thing to disrupt, and we're seeing it. in by stablecoins, then we're gonna see cards, then we're gonna see treasury management. So I want to stop there because that's our one of the first initial insights, and I want to hear your thoughts around this, Kush.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I feel like we've spoken about this before, right? Like now I don't onboard people to Phantom or the Coinbase wallet because honestly, for I don't know, my family, for example, or my physical therapist, I think that he doesn't care about crypto, right? All he cares about is like I have a German physical therapist that lives in a Latin American country, and I'm Guatemalan, and effectively only use stable coins right now in my day-to-day life. And for me to send him money, let's say from a Guatemalan bank account to an Ecuadorian bank account, it would take 3 days, $40. We all know the problems that's here, right? But now I just onboard him to one of these like crypto card accounts, and it's so easy, and he loves it, right? And I've onboarded everyone, and so it just like naturally, again, basically, life is about like from a product standpoint, reducing clicks, right, and reducing sort of that T plus time that you have in anything. And the reality is that's the best way of like approaching these cards and sort of the overall thesis here. Again, I think we know that all money will eventually move on these rails, and I think that this is just like the first manifestation of that. And I think it just makes things super easy. How are you thinking about this, and like where do you see the space heading, and sort of what evolves from here?
What I see is that we're gonna see a convergence between like these crypto native stablecoin backed cards and traditional fintech. So this platform change that I've been talking about a lot between fintech 2.0 to fintech 3.0. So I've been talking to a lot of fintechs and a lot of banks, and they have a lot of appetite for this technology, but they absolutely do not know how to implement it. So basically, that's what we're building at Bando. And the thing that I see is that there are going to be winners in both categories. So crypto native cards and crypto like stablecoin neobanks, things like Meru, Eldorado, really interesting things. And other big companies like big fintechs, so maybe Nubank, Revolut, they're gonna move their platform to stablecoins. One thing that I'm excited about is that there's gonna be, I predict that this is gonna be some news in the next 12 to 18 months. One big fintech that has between 2 to 10 million users, and they see that they're getting obsolete, they're gonna do a Hail Mary going all in stablecoin infrastructure. I'm not sure if it's gonna be in Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Southeast Asia, but they're gonna start losing market share and they're gonna go all in. I think that this won't happen in Argentina because the crypto ecosystem is really matured during the last years in that region. I think the most probable region would be either Mexico or Brazil. And also, I say that because those are the regions that I know the most. I cannot say if Thailand or Korea are going to have this type of unfolding because I need to get more context there. So that's how I see it. And Kush, I want to bring the next key data point to the table because I find this fascinating from this report. So basically, MasterCard and Visa are neck to neck in co-branded crypto cards programs. So this is an indication that it's a really close competition, right? But when you see volumes, Visa has around of 90% of the market share of volumes. And I think that this is because of just a couple strategic partnerships. The first one, Rain. So Rain has been growing super aggressively. They just announced a $200 million fundraising round at a unicorn valuation. So what I see here is that how relevant it is to do the right partnership. Because basically, Visa and MasterCard, it's a duopoly. If you haven't read D. Hawk's biography, One from Many, the founder of Visa, absolute OG, completely recommended. That guy was thinking about Bitcoin in the 70s. He just haven't realized it yet, but he was talking about it. Visa having an advantage versus MasterCard, I think that is one of the most fascinating things we've seen because it's it's a jungle, such fierce competition. What's your read on this advantage that Visa has versus MasterCard?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at all my crypto cards, they're effectively all issued by Visa. And as you say, I think this thing is it's a distribution game and it's a partnerships game. I'm surprised that there is this like neck and neck competition in terms of like number of issuance versus on-chain volume. And do you have a sense as like why there would be that discrepancy despite having issued the same amount of cards? Because that to me is kind of the strangest thing of this entire report.
Well, I think that maybe the onboarding process for Visa is less directed in the sense that any random person can, well, obviously it's not that way, but maybe they have low quality or companies starting. Maybe they're betting more in startups, and some of them are catching fire still. They are not having a lot of traction. Another hypothesis is that basically with Rain, Visa has like won a lot of it. And what I mean is that Rain is uh, like the middle layer between any stablecoin backed card and Visa. So a lot of companies in Latin America are using Rain, for example, Meru, that they're processing several tens of millions of dollars that I know. This is the thing. Visa got the right partner, that is Rain, and Rain got the right geography, that was Latin America and emerging markets. So maybe MasterCard got a Rain competitor that was focused in the US and Europe, and they didn't catch fire.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Definitely everyone should take a look at the Artemis report. It's some of the best research out there. And Kush, I want to go through the last piece of news. And I think that I want to let you elaborate our train of thought here, because I think that you're better suited than me because of your interests in telling this news, that Coinbase is working with Circle to bring Bermuda's economy on chain. I think that you are absolutely passionate about geopolitics, how a state works, how crypto and AI can unfold new type of states. So walk us through this news and why this is exciting.
Yeah, so effectively, the news is that the government of Bermuda said that it was going to be working with Coinbase and Circle to develop what they described to be a fully on-chain economy. And the premise is they want to use digital assets to enable and power everyday financial infrastructure across the entire country, right? So what's interesting is effectively what they're trying to do is they want to pilot sort of stablecoin payments across government agencies, right? So instead of you having to send money via their current banking rails, you just use the stablecoin USDC infrastructure. They want to ensure that USDC is being adopted by local businesses and so on. And then also supporting sort of the Bermudan financial institutions to integrate tokenization and other sort of digital finance tools. I think for me, this is interesting on three fronts. So the first one is the Coinbase announcement that we spoke about last time, where they said, we're going to build out a tokenization platform. We're going to build out a white label stablecoin service platform. We're also going to build out basically this like Coinbase business platform, right? And all of those together, in theory, allow for a fully integrated sort of payments network across an entire region or nation state in this case, right? So that one line is very interesting. I think also the other thing that's important to note here is the distribution angle for crypto, right? So before it was, we got a really large like protocol like MakerDAO to integrate our asset, and then it was, we got a financial institution to integrate the asset. And I think the frontier is going to be, we got a nation state to effectively do what Bermuda is doing now. It's important to note as well that Coinbase's exchange, part of it is actually licensed in Bermuda too. So, I think that is also, an important part of the crux here. Like Coinbase and Bermuda already had this very long-standing relationship. So, I think that's an essential component within this thesis.
Dude,
yeah.
you know how DJs, when they are doing a back-to-back and they play like a banger, they roll like the song back.
Yeah.
Whenever we do like an amazing insight, I'm gonna just interrupt and do that. And
Please
that was
do.
that the thing that you said. I think it's an amazing way of analyzing this. The first part of, I don't know, partnerships was maybe a protocol, then a network, then a financial institution, then a country. So this is it's so fascinating. And one thing that I want to add is that Bermuda makes a lot of sense because of the Bermuda makes a lot of sense because of the regulatory environment. They have really specific crypto licenses. A lot of companies look at Bermuda to operate, and Coinbase going there, I think that is a really, it's a great way to push regulation and say it's an indication for other countries like Bermuda they don't have anything to lose. It's full upside. So other countries that might be incumbent, they'll need to take a look at this and see what's happening. I don't think that'll happen this year. I don't think that'll happen next year, but eventually it'll be interesting to see this evolution.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
dude,
I think we saw El Salvador was like the first country, right, that did this, and then Bermuda, and I think we'll see more and more of this. But anyways, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and final news. I think that we didn't mention this, but it's as this is one of our first news recap. Rain rises 250 million Series C to scale stablecoin powered payment infrastructure to global enterprises. This fundraising puts Rain at a 1.9 billion valuation. It was led by Iconic with the participation of Dragonfly, Galaxy, Lightspeed, Norwest, Endeavor, Bessemer, and First Mark. And I don't know, really exciting to see this combination of the Artemis report, Rain, and I'm absolutely happy to see that companies are raising capital that don't have a token. And I do not clearly see how Rain could have a token. They could launch it. We're in crypto. We never know. VCs want their money back. But these guys are reaping revenue. They are growing month over month. Their team is amazing. I'm just happy for them. I'm just happy for the industry that this is one of the most exciting companies, not another layer two or a random DeFi protocol of real world assets. Nobody cares about that. These stablecoin payments are absolutely a reality, and Rain raising, obviously, raising money, raising capital is not an indication of product market fit, but we can see their product. We can see their product market fit.
Yeah, I think Rain is killing it, and I think just a massive validation. Yeah, I mean, I think, congrats to Rain. I will say on the token, if we've learned anything in crypto is whenever there's an opportunity for there to be a token, there most likely will be a token. So not to speculate, but I think I've heard the story already of like, oh, why would they ever need a token? Oh, well, here comes a token. So wouldn't be surprised if. What do you think? Will there or will there not be a Rain token? Where would you put those odds?
I don't know. That's the Schrödinger token. There is and there is not a token until we open that door.
Exactly. So, by the way, one last really interesting piece of news is the Iran story. So, I'm sure everybody's been following the news, but effectively there have been, protests across Iran where thousands of people have been killed by the government, and largely what triggered these protests in Iran are not necessarily anything new, but this particular wave was really catalyzed by the massive depreciation of the riyadh, sorry. And there was some news that came out that basically Iran was acquiring $500 million worth of USDT. Now, and sorry, in fact, it is the real. What's interesting though is that they did it through an exchange in the Emirates called Nobitex. Nobitex was then hacked in June by an Israel-linked group. And then Tether had actually blacklisted, I think it was like nearly $40 million of USDT. And what Iran did is they actually then swapped a lot of the money for non-feasible assets, right? So I think especially when you put together the like Bermuda relationship alongside the Iran like story, and like the Coinbase US Circle route is the complete opposite of like the Tether, Bitcoin, Ethereum route as well, right? I'm curious, like what comes to mind for you as you think about like where this space is going specifically, like in the context of nation state adoption, for example.
Well, really hard to see. I think that obviously regulation in stablecoins and having the technology, it's instrumental to understand and to check and to see that these transactions are happening. And what I want to shout out is that we know this because of the blockchain. I mean, there's billions of dollars that could be transacted through cash or like corrupt banks, and we'll never know. And shout out to Elliptic because they unveiled this information, and I think it's a really interesting position. And this is one of those things that it's so complex geopolitically that having a specific take about it would be absolutely wrong, because there's just the level of sensibility for it to change is huge. Because we can go to the philosophy level of why to have any sanctions on countries, and on the other side, how to implement those sanctions. So how I see it is that crypto is a great technology. It'll be used by everyone, from good guys to bad guys. I don't want to say like good countries to bad countries, but when technology works, it's the matter of the product people to make sure that it has a positive impact in the world. Oppenheimer is the best example of that. He was a fucking incredible scientist, and then he was prosecuted for a lot of shit because of the super powerful technology they created in the Manhattan Project. So,
yeah. I think Satoshi's sort of impact is up there with some of the greater sort of creators, to be honest. So, but great episode, man. I love this. This was a super fun conversation, man. Really appreciate it.
Let's keep jamming. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Read our report on crypto conferences. We need to do something as an industry. And as always, you can follow Kush in 0x Kush. You can follow me in Abraham CR. See you next time. Thank you, guys. Take care.